My name is Jerome. I grew up on the west side of Indianapolis pretty much my whole life. Mostly all black, cool, calm, collective. I knew all my neighbors, knew everybody I went to school with. It was cool. I didn't have any problems. Grocery store around the corner. It was just normal to me. I signed a plea deal for house arrest, possession of narcotics and a pistol. So 2 years on house arrest. It didn't really change me. I mean, I was already changed. I mean, I didn't really let that affect me. I already knew what time it was. So, I mean, it was just do what I gotta do and then get out. It was just like high school, literally. Fights, you had cafeteria food, you had your teachers were your COs. I mean, it was, you had bullies in there. You had people that stayed by themselves. I mean, it was the same thing. It wasn't nothing different. Because a lot of people go to prison and go to jail. I mean, it's not, I mean, hell, you can go to prison for driving on suspended. When I first came out, finding a job was a little difficult. Well, I had a few jobs. I worked at Gaylor Electric. I worked at a couple temp services. I work at a company now where I do I wire panels for motor controls. I had electrical skills, troubleshooting skills. Some of those mechanical skills from at home as well, fixing things around the house. When you ain't got that much money, so you got to fix that doorknob. You know what I mean? Like, you got to figure out how it works. So some of the things like that I kind of, picked up. I don't feel like I'm completely at a point where I don't feel like my life is not threatened by going back to prison or getting locked up for some petty charges. I'm walking on a tightrope, man, like constantly. What I observe is people with a real plan leaving out of prison stay out, period. If you got a real plan, you're gonna stay out. Well, if you got a real plan, you're gonna execute your plan, period, point blank. I've seen people come out and say they're gonna have a plan of selling dope and they stick to it. But if you got a real plan about staying out, you tend to stay out. And that's what I observed. The lesson that I learned is from being in prison is this can be your home. This can be your home. And this can be your home, and people a lot of young men do not know how serious it really is. Some people ain't coming home. Like, I think people really need to let that sink.
Richard Samuels. I am at this moment the board chairman for Community Action of Greater Indianapolis. I'm originally from New York, the Bronx. Lived there until I was probably about 7 years old. Of course, my parents divorced. Mom decided that she was going to keep the boy, and we moved to Indianapolis. Of course, coming here to Indianapolis was a lot different than New York. New York was a little bit faster paced, and so when I came here, I got into a lot of trouble. I think that I was probably a little bit too smart for my own good, and so at first it was petty things, but then of course it became a little more serious. As a matter of fact, I can remember I'm right around the corner from 34th and Capitol. 34th and Capitol, there was a little park there before they built all these other things. And I remember I had a little girlfriend, and her mom was going to work at 11 to 7 shift. And so I was there, and I had a BB gun with me. And I fell asleep in the park waiting for her mom to leave. And of course the police came, and because there was a something put out saying that there was a man in the park with a gun. And so I woke up to a 357 Smith & Wesson in my face, because that's what they carried back then, and was taken to juvenile, and was quickly given the ultimatum: either you're going to go to the service, or you're going to boys' school, or you're going to jail. So of course for me, at that point, I chose the service. Ended up going to the Great Lakes Naval Base, and did boot camp. Came out of boot camp with the MOS of trying to become an MP, a military police officer. Had leave one day on the Gold Coast in Chicago, and was in an alley playing dice, and someone decided that they were going to stick up the game. And of course, I was not letting that happen, because I had my service revolver on me. And so I shot the guy, but it was below the waist. And so with that, I got an other than honorable discharge, was sent to prison for, I think it was about 3 years. But it was my introduction to probably one of the worst experiences of my life. It was vicious in the 70s, and this is in the late 70s. After that, my life was simply a string of get out of prison, stay out for 2 or 3 months, go back to prison, in prison maybe 4 or 5 or 6 years, out of prison for a month, back to prison for 4 or 5 years, out of prison for 3 months, back to prison. And so in all, I've spent, I'm 58 years old, by the way, and I've spent 26 years of my life in prison. This last time in 2006, I was 46 years old, knew the system like the back of my hand. In 2006, I had an epiphany. During the times that I've been incarcerated, I'd watched several people die in prison. That last time, in 2006, I was sentenced to 25 years in prison. And so, doing the math in my head, basically, they had decided to lock me up and throw away the key. We done with you, you know. And so, that was my breakthrough, my epiphany, that my understanding that, wow, they not playing no more, you know. I made a promise that from that moment on, I would live my life doing the right things and making the right decisions. In 2014, I believe it was, I was released, and because of my going to college, they cut some of the years off of my sentence. So I ended up doing this last time about 9 years on a 25-year sentence. And so I got released, and I was so gung-ho and excited. Not so much about the prospect of being released, because you have to understand, I'd been in and out, and so being released was not a big deal. I was excited about the things that I had learned about myself, and excited about the things that I could share with the community, and excited that, you know, I would come out here and there would be wisdom shared, and everybody would be kumbaya, and everything would be wonderful. So I came home and immediately tried to get a job, and was told no. I went to several places. I went to PACE. I went to so many different not-for-profit organizations that said that they helped ex-offenders. And what I found was very disappointing and disheartening. And so I took a janitorial job over off of where the Marion County Health Department is, off of Rural. There's a Marion County Health, the smaller the clinic. And I worked in that clinic for about 1.5 years. After a while, it just got to the point where it was too much for me. And I was looking in the mirror, and I had the mop in my hand, and I was like, "That's not you, you know. This is not you." And so I promptly went out, put my things up and left and called and said, I won't be back. There are so many people who worry about us as ex-offenders and what we're going to do. Of course, they've changed our name so many times. We're from ex-offenders to returning citizens to, they're trying to make it sound nice or sound a little bit lighter. But unfortunately, the difficult part is that we still have that burden. No matter what we do, we've made mistakes that it seems like we can never correct. We have done our time, we've been incarcerated, we've done our probation, our parole time, and we're free and clear, so they say, until you apply for a job or you're trying to go after something positive. And you would think that having turned my life around to do nothing but help other people, that my way would be cleared to be a smoother path, but it's just gotten rougher. And it seems like the harder and harder I try to do the right thing, that the powers that be are pushing me in the other direction to do the wrong thing, because they kind of want to see me just fall back by the wayside. And so if I could share anything with those who are or have been incarcerated, that to follow your heart, and if you have it in your heart to be a good person, to simply do that and be that, and doors will be opened, maybe not the way you think they'll be opened, but if you show enough people that you're out here trying to do the right thing, people will give you a chance and they'll give you a shot.
My name is Kurt Moore. I'm from Indianapolis, Indiana. Born and raised here in Indianapolis on the east side of town. I grew up kind of in the Forest Manor, Brightwood area. Went to school 92, went to Forest Manor Junior High, and then Arlington High School. I grew up playing Little League Baseball at Forest Manor Park and going to Wheeler's Boys Club up under Ralph Dow. So I've been on the east side and been in Indianapolis my whole life. I'm 49, almost 50. Boy. Yeah, thank God I made it. But as I said, I grew up playing sports, baseball, basketball. Went to Arlington, played high school basketball and baseball. When I graduated from Arlington, I attended a junior college down in Phoenix City, Alabama, Chattahoochee Valley Community College, where I played basketball at for 2 years. Upon returning back to Indianapolis, as I like to say, after my Michael Jordan dreams were over, I became a part of the problem instead of the solution. I made some choices and some decisions that I'm not very proud of. It definitely wasn't how I was raised. I was brought up in a single parent home, but my mother was a very strong woman and made sure that I was around a lot of other men. So I was taught how to be a man and how to be respectful and so forth. But I made some bad decisions. And when I came home in the early 90s is when the crack epidemic was raging through Indianapolis and most cities across this country. So myself and some of my other buddies, we were lured in not so much by the drugs themselves, but by the money. We were lured in by that quick dollar. You know, we forgot all about our morals and values and what it meant to work hard for your dollar, and we started chasing that easy dollar. Unfortunately, we were pretty good at it. We made a lot of money out here in the streets. But as I tell my kids, and I'll get to that point later, there's in my mentor program, for every action, there's a reaction. There's consequences to everything. So the consequences to me being involved in that was, one, I've been shot. Two, I've lost many close friends that were like brothers to me, to the streets and to drugs. But three, also, I was arrested in 1996, September 14th, which is right around the corner from now, but September 14th, 1996, I was arrested for drugs, for possession with intent to distribute 640 odd grams of powder cocaine and 64 grams of crack cocaine. Also carrying a gun in relation to a drug trafficking crime. So I was arrested and eventually went to trial, convicted, and sentenced to 211 months in federal prison, which is 17 years, 7 months. As soon as I was arrested, I remember calling my mama and was like, she already had heard that I was arrested and was like, well, it's time to be a man. So from that point on is when I changed my whole life, and I decided to be, I knew I was gonna have to go through some things over the next few years, but where I made a decision where I was gonna give my life to Christ first and foremost, but also where I decided I wasn't coming out of this situation the same way I came in. So I was baptized in that orange jumpsuit downtown Marion County Jail. Eventually sent off to the first institution, which was Manchester, Kentucky, with Manchester FCI, Federal Prison in Kentucky, which I did 3 years there. And then I went on to Ashland, Kentucky, to Ashland Federal Prison, which I did 10 years there. During my incarceration, I tried to do everything possible to make a difference in my life, and so that when I came out, that I can make a positive impact or difference, one, in my family and in my community. I got my degree in business while I was in there. I took every class you can think of that had anything to do with business or had anything to do with my spirituality. I knew that first and foremost I had to learn who I was as a man, as a child of God, and as a black man living in America. So I read everything. The crazy thing is, I always tell this story. I went all the way through high school and 2 years of college and never read a book from cover to cover until I went to prison. And while I was incarcerated, I probably read thousands of books. So I made sure that I was, so to speak, educated by the time I came out. So I ended up serving 13 years on that 17-year sentence. I went in, I was 27 years old. I got out, I was 40. As of right now, I've been out, it'll be 9 years this December. When I went in, of course, I had cars, I had jewelry, I had, I was, what they say in the streets, I was ghetto fabulous. Now that I'm out, when I came out, I was dead broke. Back home, living with my mama, catching the bus. In the beginning, when I first got home, no question, there was a struggle. You know what I'm saying? Because it's always a struggle within yourself, or a fear, so to speak, of the unknown. You don't know, even though you've prepared yourself as much as possible while you're incarcerated for the day that you're going home, but you're still not quite sure which way your journey is going to end up, which way it's going to take you. I had a guy ask me the other day, he was like, well, man, you had a plan. I said, well, I didn't plan on washing cars, when I got out, but praise God, he gave me the ability in order to take whatever was there, whatever card that was dealt to me, I played it and ran with it. So it's been a blessing. When I look back, it's been a fast journey, but it's been a long journey to be where I am today. The thing that I'm most passionate about, though, as I said, Pastor Webster gave me a platform in order for me to tell my story. And when other people or other organizations around the country, so to speak, Paul Ryan, Speaker of the House, he got a hold of Pastor and what he was doing with these men through the men's boot camp. They also got a hold of my story. And so they opened it up and gave me an invite in order to go to New Orleans and speak on a national panel, which there were many judges and prosecutors. There was a couple of Supreme Court justices and so forth down there. And they wanted to talk about my transition from prison to being in the free world now. And from there, man, it's just been a snowball effect to where it's just been growing. And because of Pastor, I've been able to tell my story and speak, in New Orleans and Chicago and New York and Connecticut and Vegas and so forth.
My name is Leonard McKinney. I'm from Chicago, Illinois, a area called K-Town. Came up in K-Town. K-Town was called K-Town because all of the streets were named, begin with a K. But we redefined it and called it K-Town for Killer Town. And we grew up, a lot of young boys grew up in that area with the mentality that you have to kill somebody in order to be, or you have to be a killer in order to be recognized in the street. And still to this day, Cape Town is probably one of the toughest places in Chicago. No matter how bad it is on every side of town, if you go and ask the gangbangers and this and that, what wouldn't you want to be? They'll tell you K-Town. And coming up in that area, I won't say I was influenced by the area, because I don't believe that you're a product of your environment. I believe that you can shape your environment to be what you need it to be if the mindset is right. But I came up and coming from a single family home, my mother was not well-to-do. So basically, I wanted to get money. I mean, I wanted things. So I started selling drugs at a very early age. And at a very early age, I became very successful because I had great mentors in that field. And again, like I said before, part of the drug culture is that there may be some jail time associated with that. And I got introduced to the jail time at about 22, 23. And I did 2 years. And when I came out, I recognized that there were some hurdles that existed for a convicted felon. And one of those hurdles is the lack of housing, right? Because, you talk about low income housing and affordable housing. Well, that's under the that's a federal establishment right there, right? FHA controls federal housing, right? And one of the rules to live in federal housing is that you cannot be a convicted felon. So here I am, a convicted felon. I've got $16 that the state give you after you do your time. And now I need a house, I need to eat, and all these other things. So if I go to a job and they have that famous box, have you ever been convicted of a felony, right? I'm already ruled out. In most cases, on any job that pays any substantial amount of money, 9 times out of 10, that box means everything, right? You're not going to get that. Now, you can go and work at McDonald's or Burger King or something like that, and being realistic, you can't pay bills from that place, right? Grown men and women cannot pay bills working at McDonald's. Okay, so I said, okay, what do I know how to do? I knew how to sell dope. So I said, well, you know what? Why would I stand in McDonald's for $150 a week when I can make $5,000? Makes no sense. The mathematics don't compute. So I went back to doing the same thing that I was doing. And as I said before, it's a part of what they call the game. It's really not a game, but we've deemed it in the street to be a game. That's part of the brainwashing or the mentality that we pass on in that culture, because we call it a game. But if it was a game, then when Tupac got killed, he should have had a do-over because he got cheated. Okay, I went back to the penitentiary and I got back out. That was a choice, and I wanted to change some things, and I started to look into Christianity, and I saw some of the principles of Christianity that actually worked for my life, right? And I'm just going to keep it real. Whether you believe in Christ or not, as far as I'm concerned, it makes no difference unless you check out the principles. Because if the principles work, then you'll try to find out why these principles are established and who established them. How did they work for him? So those things led me into a belief, and I gave my life to Christ. The education stands for one thing, but if you don't know how to articulate, you're still going to be rejected. I was preparing myself for some of the battles that I was going to fight. And then when I did get out, I realized that some things had to change, right? Because the Bible always talks about change, a man's heart, a man's thinking, So I said, the first thing I need to change is my environment. So I moved to Indiana. I was on parole when I came to Indiana, which is actually a offense to send me back to jail, right? And when I had to go and see my parole officer, I went and told my parole officer, I said, hey, look, I'm trying to get my life together. I'm not playing no games. I said, I'm just going to tell you straight out. I do not live in Illinois anymore. I said, if I stay in Illinois, I'm going back to the penitentiary. I talked to a lot of guys that have been incarcerated. And part of the issue is that when things get tough, they shrink back. Nobody's really wanting to do that extra pull. See, because when I came out, I didn't have the job I have today. I started working on roofing. They misused me. And I never complained because guess what? I had a family I wanted to take care of. I had too many things that were down the road. I had a made up mind. Whether the world agreed with it or not, like I said, I started with one $8 an hour job. Guess what? It wasn't enough. So I said I need a second one. Sleep 2 hours in my car, and then got another job. It paid $10 an hour, so I quit the second job, and I said I'm gonna work, and I'm gonna work so hard that these people are gonna pay me. And guess what? They didn't pay me. But you know what? That was all in the race. Because you know what? You look at a hurdles race, and many times you've seen this. A guy running that race, and he trips over one of the hurdles, right? It's a choice whether he gets up after he does that, because he can still finish the race. Who said that you always got to win?
Hi, my name is Daisy Members, and I'm 55 years old. I grew up in Brightwood. We had Northeast Community Center, where we went after school. We had arts and crafts there. We had basketball teams. I played basketball with them. You know, it was a lot of things we did. Traveled a lot. Played against the different centers in other neighborhoods. We had Douglas, just all the centers that was in the surrounding area. When I was, it was pretty good for us, you know, as far as recreational wise. I've been in and out of the prison system quite a few times. My story, wow, it goes back to about when I was like 17. Between 16 and 17 is when I started. The crime that I just, it was theft, boosting, however you want to look at it. But it's something, I was in high school, something I got a wing of from a couple of friends of mine, wondering, you know, how they were dressing and not working, and, you know, and they showed me what they did, and I got off into it. And as years progressed, I became addicted to it, and yes. My first case I caught, I was like 19, but I, you know, just did a first offenders class, paid $75, did a first offenders class, and that was it. It was just like a slap on the hand. That didn't stop me. As the years progressed, I went on and on and on with it. Not proud of what I did, but I did it. And I always held myself accountable for what I did. It helped me in some ways, and then again, it didn't help me. It didn't help me because it kept me away from my kids. Affected, not so much as damage-wise, but I'm gonna say my kids, because at some point, you know, like my youngest, she's now incarcerated. With her, she was my bullheaded one. She wasn't a bad kid, you know, but it was one thing that she said, and hurt in my heart, that my middle daughter, Brianna, she said, you know, she said, Poopy, Mommy will be home in a minute, Mommy will be home. And I was told that Poopy said, well, she'll just be with us for a couple of years and leave again, you know. And that crushed me, you know what I'm saying? It crushed me to the fullest. But, you know, I thought back through my incarceration, I thought back and I was like, she's right. You know, she was right, you know. It seemed like every few years I would leave them, you know. But whenever I came home, you know, they always visit. Whenever I came home, it was like it was just back to the norm. You know, it was back to the norm. You know, the love was there. You know, it wasn't a wedge. It wasn't a wedge or anything, but that was just the one thing that's always stuck in my head, that she said that, and that it was true. You know, that was true. Upon getting out of prison and then to any other job that I wanted and was qualified for, until they seen that felony and the type of felony it was, that was a red flag for me, which you know, I was honest about that, but I would always tell them, we'll discuss upon interview, because I would tell them, you know, even though I did what I did, I'm a changed person, you know. I never stole from my jobs, you know. It was just something I got off into, but that didn't help, you know. So that, and it really hurt because I knew I was qualified, and I had the passion, you know, and the love and the drive to take care of the elderly, because like I said, that's something I always wanted to do. I love to work. Right now I miss working so bad, you know, that I would offer to clean houses for certain people, you know, because, you know, I love to work. But I don't think society has really accepted me, because it's still where so they look at that one thing, you know, that one red flag, which, you know, and I would listen, you know, I am a changed person. I'm a changed woman, you know, and I'll work my hardest, I do my darndest, you know, but it's still there. Just give us a chance. Let us do what we know we can do. I mean, take the blinders off. Just take the blinders off and let us show you. I mean, give us a trial period, you know. If we haven't succeeded in that trial period, then that's that, you know. But let it be known, have an understanding. But take the blinders off.